All right. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody joining in. I know this is super different, but I don't know about you guys. This is just kind of a bright spot in my day. I think we're all just feeling a lot of stress, and this is so different for everybody. So hopefully we can just like kind of have fun and do something normal together today. So this would have been our March meeting at CapTech. I would have been saying thank you to Travis about now. We really do appreciate them being willing to host, and also want to say for Tableau, thank you so much for putting together this webinar and getting this out to everyone so quick. It was kind of last minute decision to go this route, and I really appreciate all of our presenters for stepping up and changing things up like this. It was really cool. Okay, technical difficulties, my bad. Everyone can still hear me, right?
You're good now.
Okay. All right. So our next meeting, before we get started today with like our first presentation, I'll just hit on this. I guess we're still scheduled to have the meeting at Emory Brain Health Center. However, obviously that's a big question mark. So we will be sure to send a lot of
to have that meeting.
Yeah.
We look
really
forward to being at Emory.
Exactly. But hopefully this goes super well today and it works out great and it's seamless and perfect. So if we have to do this again, hopefully that'll be a great option. So just stay tuned and I'll make sure to update, like you can always find information out on the dashboard as well. Okay, so for today's agenda, Nelson, you want to walk through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're super excited. As always, we've got a great group of folks who are here to share on some wisdom with what's going on in the Tableau world here in Atlanta. We're going to have the opportunity to hear from Travis and Marissa. They had a really timely series of analysis they were going to do on March Madness. Unfortunately, that along with a handful of other things have been recently canceled. So, but Travis continues forward. He's going to talk through, how they've done this in the past, and hopefully we'll get to do it again real soon. So excited about that. We will do a little bit of a networking break. We've got Anna and Nathan have got a great little Kahoot quiz for us that should be real fun. Some awesome music, so we're pumped about that. And then I know we're all looking really forward to Karen leading a women in data panel with Anna, Kelly, and Stacy. So we're really excited about that right around the 2:30 mark. But before we get there, we've got the opportunity to hear from another really amazing group here in Atlanta that focuses on kind of data science for good. And so love to intro the folks from the ATOlytics. Karen, if you want to go ahead and advance us.
Sure.
And then Bharat, if you want to jump in and talk about your organization, what y'all do, how folks can get involved, and then any as some of us have more time on our hands than we're typically accustomed to, others not so much. But if folks want to get involved on what's going on, how can they connect with you all?
Okay, well, thank you. So ATOlytics was founded in 2018 by 3 PhDs who are in various fields, such like Khalife is in Home Depot, Beverly's with relational AI, and Andrea's with Delta. So all these big companies, various companies that involved in various businesses. And when we think of data, a lot of times we think of things like sales and all these like reason and facts, but we rarely ever think about how much good it can do for the world. And the founders of ATOlytics saw several problems happening in the world, like homelessness, and they wanted to do something about it. And they knew that in order to solve the problem, you have to have good data. And so in 2018, there was the Southern Data Science Conference. Together with them, they actually had they started a hackathon for homelessness, and different teams got together to come up with it. There was a data set given to all the teams, and they tried to come up with a problem and submit a solution. And that kind of was the birth of how ATOlytics was founded. Next slide. So some other projects that ATOlytics worked on, in 2019, there was a hackathon in fighting human trafficking, which includes, various forms of trafficking, whether it be labor, adult, child, even sex trafficking. And they worked with a lot of major organizations like the FBI, but among them, there are other projects as well, like the opioid crisis, and also like STEM education, so in schools. So there's a lot of different projects going on with ATOlytics. Right now, one of the projects I'm working on is the opioid crisis. So we're actually working with a nonprofit called Davis Foundation to help them with data, using their data to show grant writers to obtain grants for some of the programs that they have. And then some future projects are looking at like fire safety, optimizing foster care. And if, let's say, you want to get involved in them, there will be, so we do have meetings. So on the next slide, it shows some of our, so Meetup is the best way to get involved. So just we have our meetings on Meetup, and it'll discuss the different projects we have and like who to contact to get involved. The projects do take usually up to a few hours a week. Sometimes there's in-person meetings, and sometimes there's a lot of the meetings have been like teleconferences, Google Hangouts, and so we just look at and free time we look at data sets. So and you can get involved as many or as few projects as you want. And then, of course, there's hackathons. So the Meetup is the best way to find out, when meetings are, and so that you can attend and see what's going on, what projects are going on. Although we also have a LinkedIn page, Facebook, and a lot of updates or events are posted on them. So if you do have any, if you are interested in getting involved, these are some of the best ways to find out how you can help.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. All right. Nelson, I know you added a slide in here. Is it showing up?
I'm not seeing it.
If you're not seeing it, do you just want to touch on what you were gonna?
Yes, actually, if you pass me the ball, I'll shift over
Sure.
to my version real quick. Beautiful. All right, now I gotta figure out how to do this. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Everybody see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, there we go.
Sweet. Okay. So, man, there's been so much going on, and y'all, our hearts really go out. Heartbreaking to see all the different emotions that people are feeling, and the uncertainty and the fear and whatnot. And as I began to think about, a huge part of why Karen and I, decided to lead ATOG was that we just simply love this community. We love Atlanta. We love Tableau. We love data, but we love people. And hopefully that comes through really well when we're all together. But we're really passionate about seeing people do great things through the use of data, but even more as a community. And so as I kind of pondered on that, I thought about for a little bit, what could we do in this season where things are so crazy, and we're all just trying to sit here and figure out how can we help. And yet we feel like, our four walls are closing in on us. We're powerless to do that, and we don't know what that looks like. I was kind of thinking and praying for certain groups of people. And you know, the first group that was really on my heart was just the people that have been affected by this, the people that actually have this this virus and this disease that are all over the world. You know, some of our now neighbors, or you know, not my neighbors. I don't know. Maybe my neighbors have it. Who knows, right? But you know, people that live in our city, you know, have this disease, and people who are in our state and in our country, and but also people all over the world. And my heart just goes out to them and the uncertainty that they've got with that. And then, you know, my next big thing was to think about the medical care professionals, you know, the doctors, the nurses, the people that work at hospitals, you know, even the janitors and the cleaning crews and stuff like that. Like, these people are putting their lives at risk for us and for our society to continue to thrive. And you know, I've been filled with emotion looking at some of the Twitter posts and Facebook posts of people who are doctors who are now sleeping in different rooms or sleeping in the garage or something like that for the next X period of time. And they don't know when they can hug their kids. And so I just emotionally just, it hurt to even think about if I couldn't hug my kids at night, or hug my wife. And so, you know, thought about them a lot. And then, you know, my thoughts really turned as well to the leaders of our country, and of our country, of our state, of Atlanta, and just really focusing in on what great leadership looks like in this season. What do you do when there's no playbook? What do you do when you're faced with something that you don't know how to handle? And it brought me to a lot of interesting places. You know, one of my favorite quotes that's come back to me recently is a quote from Winston Churchill, and he basically says, you know, fear is a reaction, but courage is a decision. And as we look at what's going on in the world, I think it's really easy to fear, right? And I think fear is certainly a very valid emotion right now. The problem is that if we stay in fear, we can't move forward. And I gave a lot of thought to, okay, how can we begin to help people, you know, help people who are scared, and help people who can't go outside, and help people who don't know what to do? What could we possibly do to help people? It just came up with this idea of reading a book together. And the book that I chose is focused on a gentleman who is one of the most interesting leaders that I know of, and somebody that I heard of many years ago, but I've never actually read this book. But it's a gentleman by the name of Ernest Shackleton. And for those of you who know anything about Shackleton, or those of you who've never heard of him before, Shackleton was an explorer in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And he went on a number of expeditions all over the world, but he's most famous in our day and age because of an expedition that went wrong. He went with a crew of about 27 people down to the Antarctic, and they had a long expedition they were going to do. But as they were getting into the season of that expedition, they became shipwrecked. And just imagine yourself for a moment that you are shipwrecked in Antarctica in 1914. You have no communication to the outside world. You know, all you have is what you have at your disposal. And I began to think about, you know, kind of where we ultimately get to safety. Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. Ultimately get to safety. But he also was able to save every single one of his 27 member crew as well. And many of them attribute his leadership during that period of time to the single reason they all lived. And two women went back and wrote an amazing book that's gotten some great reviews around the leadership style that he had over the course of his career, but specifically focusing on this expedition of the Endurance. So what we're launching today is an opportunity for everybody to read this book together. And what this ultimately looks like is, we're going to basically give everybody about 3 weeks to dive through this book. It's about 200 pages. And then we're going to hold a virtual meeting around what this looks like. We want to talk about what we're learning. We want to talk about the impact it's making on us. We want to talk about just kind of our feelings and so forth, and just to create an opportunity for us to kind of go through this together as a community and to learn something. It's really easy to watch CNN and get scared, or the news and kind of freak out, and oftentimes it has a lot to do with where we're paying attention or what we're paying attention to. So I felt like this would be a really cool opportunity to pay attention to something that would hopefully inspire us, hopefully give us hope, and to do that together. You don't have to join this by any stretch of the imagination. This is totally up to you. And if you've got friends that you're like, hey, this would be really fun, you should do this. I'm going to do this. I think my wife's going to read the book too. A couple of other friends of mine are going to read it and join us. And so April 9th, which happens to be my birthday, woohoo, at 3:30 p.m.
That's birthday? My birthday is April 8th.
Yeah, what's up? That's why April people are awesome.
Right.
But yeah, so April 9th, we'll be back here 3 weeks from today, 3:30 p.m. to 5 o'clock. We'll kind of go until there's no more to talk about. So excited about that. And then in the interim, if you choose to jump in with us on this, we've also created a channel on the ATL Tug Slack channel called Lit Leaders. And so we're super pumped about that. So I'm really grateful. Hopefully this is something that you're excited about. Hopefully this is helpful. Our heart at the end of the day is to just do something that we felt like could be helpful, and to kind of turn back and help as many people as possible. So we'd love your feedback and ideas on this. And if it's helpful and a bunch of people want to do it again, hey, that would be awesome. If we're going to be doing this for a while, so maybe read a couple of these books. So anyway, hopefully this is a great start towards that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. There is a link already set up. If anybody who's interested, take your phone out and take that QR code if you haven't already. Feel free to register and check out the details. There's a whole bunch more explanation on that page, so feel free to read all that. And again, if you've got questions, love to connect with you on that, if we can be helpful to you in any way. Oh, I'm also being told to let everybody know, hey, use the Q&A instead of the chat if there is a question. So there we go. Awesome. I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to send it back to you, Karen.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Are we back to my screen? Just making sure.
Yes.
Good.
I see
okay.
your screen.
Okay. So, yeah. Just a reminder. I see a lot in the chat, which is great. But the Q&A, we'll kind of moderate that. It's a little easier. Things kind of get lost in the chat during all this. There's gonna be a lot of great content. We'll kind of pause at different points, perhaps, and go through the Q&A throughout all this. So feel free to post any questions that you want addressed in the Q&A. We'll try to get to them. Our first presentation is March Madness, which is kind of ironic, but it's going to be great. We've got Travis Harple and Marissa Gaddis from CapTech, and Travis is a manager with CapTech. Marissa is a data analytics consultant. I will go ahead and hand it over to them. You guys, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and go ahead and take it over.
Awesome. And while they're getting going, just to say this, type your answers and we'll kind of make a judgment call as y'all are typing things out. If it's something we need to answer kind of immediately, we'll go ahead and I'll interrupt the presenters and ask them that question. If it's something that can wait toward the end, we'll hold that question towards the end, and then we'll kind of pelt them with questions for fun at the end of this. So that'll be kind of our form of operation. Travis, it's all on you guys. Go for it.
Hey guys, can you see my screen and hear me?
Yes, you're rocking it.
Okay, perfect. Like Nelson and Karen said, this is CapTech, Marissa, Gaddis, and Travis. We're here to present Visualizing Madness, which is a project that we've been working on for the past year and some change, all around the March Madness tournament. Thankfully, we had 2019 actually happen, so we have some data to work with. We were hoping that we would be in day 1 or day 2 of this year's tournament, but unfortunately it got canceled. So we're just gonna reminisce and enjoy the sports that we can via this presentation. So I hope you guys enjoy. We're excited to share. So today we're going to, first kick it off and introduce ourselves. I'm sure a few of you are familiar with Travis. He has been to a few ATOLITICs before. This is my first ATOLITIC, so I'm very new. We're going to give some background into why we chose a project around March Madness, dive into the data pipeline, how did we build the data to get to our dashboards. We're going to do the fun part, which is demoing the dashboards, a few of our dashboards that we built out for the tournament, and go in a little deeper into one particular aspect of one of our dashboards, which is the score ticker, and explain how we built that particular functionality. And then lastly, we're going to ask the question, how is this relevant, and answer it for you guys, and then open it up for any questions that you guys might have. So to kick it off, like they said, my name is Marissa Gaddis. I am a consultant with CapTech in the data and analytics realm practice area. I am just a year out of college. I went to Georgia Tech. So this is my first full-time gig, and I've been really enjoying it. I really love consulting. And I was first introduced to Tableau back in 2017 in an internship, and I got to do some self-teaching of the basics, but the project that I'm on now within CapTech has really, not the March Madness one, but my client project, I've really gotten to build out a lot more tips and tricks and learn all of the meat that comes with Tableau. So it's been a whirlwind in the past 3 years to build up to this point. And I've become really passionate about telling stories with data. And for fun facts, my favorite teams are Georgia Tech because it's my alma mater, and Arkansas because it's the rest of my family's alma mater. So, and thankfully, back in 1994, they claimed the national championship. So I'll claim that one. And then Travis, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Travis Harple here, manager at CapTech in the data analytics space. So I've been doing all things data for 10 plus years now since I graduated college. Got introduced to Tableau back in 2014 with the organization I was working with, and almost exclusively worked in it for most of my projects since then. My favorite teams are my two alma maters, Georgia Southern and Auburn. Auburn's also a family school, so even if I didn't graduate there, I was going to be a fan. The pedigree for my school is not as impressive as Marissa's. So we only have 13 combined appearances with one Final Four, which is last year. But we're going to hold hope for 2021.
Nice. So, of course, we want to share with you guys what is CapTech. You may or may not be familiar with CapTech. We're a little bit smaller in terms of consulting firms. But really what we do is technology and management consulting. We have about 1,100 consultants across 8 different offices. You can see here in this pretty little yellow United States. So, we are primarily on the East Coast now, but we're hoping to spread our wings over towards the West Coast as time progresses. We do primarily project-based work, and in a local-based model. And what I mean by that is we primarily work with clients that are close in proximity to our offices, so as to allow us to be more present with the clients on a day-to-day basis, but also to be present with our families at home. So having that work-life balance is really great, and not spending the time being in a hotel or on a plane. So it's really nice having that model. So, you know, obviously client work comes first with for us at CapTech, but as a nature of consulting, our product is ourselves and our own skills. So in order to grow our skills and to make better products that we can sell, CapTech gives us a lot of freedom to take on initiatives, there we go, initiatives and internal projects to build and to grow and to learn. And that's where this project really sprung from. So why did we choose March Madness? I mean, first of all, who doesn't love college sports? I know I particularly prefer college sports over professional sports. It's just a lot more easy to get passionate and enthusiastic about a sport when it's somewhere that I went, and I can really cheer on people that I might have even gone to school with. So something really fun and exciting. It's also a very short-term tournament. We could have chosen a sport that, you know, walked through the entire season, but that would have taken a long time. It would have had a lot of data. So we wanted to kind of shrink down the time span that we were looking at. Also with March Madness, there's a lot of easy access live data that's available. So that was really nice for us. We didn't have to go hunt down some data and sign up for random things to get access to things. So, and lastly, we wanted to make it a fun thing for our office. We actually made an office tournament, which is what these dashboards were used for, is in our office tournament. So we came into this project, it was Travis and myself, as well as we had a few different management consultants, a couple other data and analytics consultants, and we all got together and we kind of built these requirements for ourselves. We, first off, really wanted to make use of the live data that was accessible to us. We wanted to build out dashboards that, if not real time, they were near real time. Second, we wanted a unique experience for the consumers. So, you know, we could have just had everyone in the office who wanted to participate go log on to whatever NCAA and, you know, make a bracket and just use whatever graphics that they had built out for the UI. But we wanted to make our own. We wanted to make it unique for our office and hone the dashboards more around the participants rather than around the teams and the schools, because we thought that would be a little bit more fun for the people that were participating. And then lastly, we wanted it accessible to everyone, both that was participating in our tournament and then later on for things like this, so that we could publish it somewhere, somebody could pull down our dashboards, look at our logic, and maybe utilize it for some work that they were doing. So we, in order to do this, we have utilized Tableau Public, and we've published all of our work up there so that at any point in the tournament, any of our participants could log into, or they really have to log in. They can just access Tableau Public and look at all the dashboards, see where they stand. And that was really fun for everyone. So now we're gonna get into the data and I'm gonna pass it off to Travis for this.
Yeah, so before we dive into the dashboards, we wanted to take just a couple of minutes to talk about how we set up the data pipeline and some of the interesting challenges that solved, because we can't really build a cool dashboard without getting that data from somewhere. So the first requirement was the one that kind of posed some interesting challenges, and that's that near real-time data. We knew we wanted to use Tableau Public. So we needed, the only way to refresh data in Tableau Public is if you're using Google Sheets as your data source. So that kind of made that choice easy. We had to use Google Sheets. And now the interesting piece was, how do we get the data from wherever we're scraping it from the web into Google Sheets and then refreshed when we want it to? And there was a few paths we explored. The first was there's a function within Google Sheets called import HTML. And really what that allows you to do is plug in a URL and then search that URL for a table or list and then import that list into your worksheet. The issue that we ran into here is when you're trying to pull in a lot of data, so if we have, I think, 63 games across these 18 days or something like that, it really slows down the computation for running these calculations. So it doesn't refresh quickly, and Google Sheets kind of lags trying to handle those functions. So we pivoted and decided to go with Python. And so with the beautiful soup library, we're able to go and scrape the data real time from the web and then load that data into the Google Sheet that was used as the backend for Tableau. And that was much quicker. We didn't have the issue with the formulas in Google Sheets, and it was close to as real time as we could get. So here's how the data pipeline is currently set up. We're scraping the data from ncaa.com, and our Python scripts are sitting on EC2 today. When we first set this up last year, we had it running on a Raspberry Pi that was plugged into the office, and there was a few cron jobs that would just every 10 minutes go and grab the data and load it into the Google Sheet. This year, we decided to go and push that up to EC2. Unfortunately, we're not able to run it just because there's no tournament, but hey, we at least tried it. The other interesting thing is when you're using Google Sheets, Tableau Public will automatically refresh your data, but it only does it once every 24 hours, which was a problem because we wanted to be able to update these dashboards as close to live as we could. So to solve for that, we set up a separate Python script that utilized the Selenium package. And what that does is essentially, if you were to watch it on your screen, it would go to open Chrome, type in the URL, and then click the refresh button. And so we have that running on EC2 in a headless state where it doesn't actually have to open Chrome and run it. It does it in the background.
Sweet. So now we want to do the fun part, and we want to demo some of the dashboards that we had built out, both from last year and a few that we had built in anticipation of this year for the tournament. So I'm going to exit out of this and go to my browser. Let's see. All right, can everyone see the browser screen? I'm gonna take that as a yes. Okay, sweet. So we built out, I don't know, maybe 7 to 10 different dashboards that, like Travis said, when we had plugged into our TVs in our office, the Raspberry Pi would periodically shuffle through them and show a different one for, I don't know, like a minute or so. And then you could also access all of these dashboards within our Tableau public account. So we picked out a few that we wanted to highlight and walk through. This is the first one, and this is one that highlights the office picks for today's game. But before I get into that section of the dashboard, I wanted to explain the skeleton that's built around it. So I built this this banner as well as the top 5 and the scoreboard over here to the right. I built that as a skeleton that most of the dashboards from last year sat on top of. And the only thing that really changed dashboard to dashboard was this visualization here in the bottom left corner. And I got some inspiration from, like Sports Center applications and tried to get that sports vibe, but I wanted to make it unique. And with that, we have here at the very top a last updated little text box here, and this shows what Travis was talking to, where that cron job would go in and refresh it every, I think it was 10 minutes. So this would allow our consumers to see when the dashboards were last refreshed, because we were trying to keep it as near to real time as we could. And then I really wanted to make it as visually appealing as possible and highlight the participants as well as I could. So we tried to utilize Tableau's custom shapes and custom colors. And in this case, we took all of the participants' headshots and put them in, and anytime they got to land in the top 5, they got to be on, you know, the top center of our dashboards in the office, which was fun for them. It shows both their headshot as well as how many points they are from the leader. So, you know, can they catch up? And then of course, everyone else could look up here on the side in the scoreboard where they fell in terms of rank, their points, and then their accuracy. So, you know, how well are they picking the teams in the tournament. For this particular visualization, I wanted to show the breakdown of how the office picked for each particular game in that day's date. So obviously this is not today, because today there's no game. So I actually went and hard coded in just a random date from last year. I think it's the first game from Elite 8. But last year when it was live, I had utilized Tableau's today's date function as the filter for this visualization. And then I brought the game identification. So where it says game 1, I brought that into detail so that you could see all the different games that happened on that particular date. And then in each of these lines, you'll see in a stacked bar chart format the team, as well as the percent of the office that had picked that team to win that game. So,
Marissa,
yep.
sorry, do you mind if I ask you one question?
Yeah, go for it.
It looks like we got a question about the extract. You'd mentioned the extract can be refreshed directly from the dashboard itself. And we just had someone asking, like, can you show how that happens?
Yeah, so I think what Travis was referring to was that we built out a cron job that would literally go in, and not on our, it wasn't anyone physically doing this. It would go in and click the request update button, and then we would be put in a queue, and Tableau would then, in due time, it usually took about a minute, and it would refresh all of our data that was pulled in from the Python scripts that Travis walked through. And Travis, correct me if any of that was wrong.
No, you nailed it. That's it.
Does that answer the question?
It does.
That is yes. Okay, perfect. So yeah, and you'll notice here at the left, or to the right, I have losers in gray. And what is meant by that was that in the beginning of the tournament, obviously every team is playing. So in the beginning of the tournament, for the most part, you would only have 2 teams that were broken out here. But as the tournament progressed, you know, when you get into the Elite 8 round, there was a possibility that 4 different teams could have been playing that particular game. But obviously, when it comes down to it, only 2 are going to play, and the rest are considered losers because they're out of the tournament. And so this was interesting because clearly, at least for this game 4, so many of our office had picked those other contenders for that game that had eventually got knocked out of the tournament. So it was an interesting thing to look at as the tournament progressed. So that was our first dashboard. Another one that we wanted to look at was the points breakdown by round. So this one has a similar skeleton as I pointed out before. But here I wanted to show in a stacked bar chart the how each player was gaining points in terms of the rounds. And then so I have the rounds in the color, in the different colors so you can see. And I thought this was really interesting because, I mean, you know, you could see down here with Scott, like he did really awesome in the first 2 rounds, but clearly like did not make up for it in the end. Whereas Fabrice, who won the entire tournament, didn't do as well in the first round, but he really made up for it in later rounds. And then he actually picked, I think it was UVA that won last year. He picked UVA as the winner. So I thought this was interesting just to see how, like, with time it progressed, and how, like, some people you could get such a minimal amount of points in one round, but still, you know, really be able to make up for it in later rounds. I only had this filtered to the top 10 players because I thought it wasn't really necessary to show everybody, but I just thought it was interesting way to look at it. So that was one of them. And then the last one that I'm going to show is our mobile dashboard. So we knew that some people in our office would want to just be able to pull up the dashboard on their phone and just look at it really quickly. Where do they stand in relation to everyone else in the office? So we used Tableau's, they're like different device layouts to build. I think this one was really fit around the iPhone 8. A dashboard. It was much more simple, but we just wanted to highlight the most important things that people would want to look at on their phone. So this is really cool way to make it publicly accessible to everyone, even if they were on the train or out in the park or something. And then Travis, I think you wanted to go over the other two.
Yeah, I can do that. So this was one that we built new for this year. We kind of started off with like what's a March Madness tournament without a bracket. So we wanted to put a bracket into the dashboard, and the intent with the bracket was we wanted to have it update real time and show the scores of the games. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that today because there's no games happening, but we were able to plug in last year's data. And Marissa, if you hover over one of the points, you can actually see the scores of the two teams playing. So if this was real time, we would have real time scores, but unfortunately we don't. And then at the top, we just wanted to highlight some high level metrics, both about the tournament. So at this point in the tournament, all the teams, there's 64 teams. It lasted 18 days with 6 rounds. We get the total points scored across all of the rounds by each of the teams. And we wanted to show how did CapTech do as an office. So we had 4 practice areas competing: management consulting, systems integration, DNA, and internal. The interesting thing, DNA, we were 3rd on the list when we should have probably been number 1. We could have built some models or something that predicted this, but next year. And then towards the bottom, we trying to stick to that theme of let's make something that kind of looks like SportsCenter or ESPN or something like that. And we used animations here to build something like a score ticker that would scroll through and show scores as they're updated. And so she plays that, it'll cycle through and show the scores of everybody that's participating in the office.
That is so cool.
So I think that's it for that one.
Do you want to show the bar chart race or?
Yeah, we can show the bar chart race as well. We also figured animations are now a thing, and you can use them in Tableau Public with the play button. So why not build a bar chart race to show that point breakdown, but to show it over the course of the tournament. So she clicks the play button, we'll see the scores update and the players shuffle in real time as it cycles through all the different games that have happened. And that's pretty much it for that one.
I think that was all the ones that we
I think
had.
that's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what we wanted to do next was take some time, checking the clock here, to dive into how we built that score ticker, so that maybe you could go and do that somewhere in your organization, or if you just want to go mess around with it and have fun. So there's a few things that needed to happen. One, organizing the data. To get the score ticker to work, we needed to get the data in a certain shape so that we could utilize the play button on the pages shelf for it to cycle through different points in that graph. The next was calculating the endpoint. And so every rank has a start point, and that's the current rank that that player's in, but we wanted to take the rank and then cycle it to an endpoint where it was on a different point on the chart. And lastly, animation, bringing the viz to life by using all of that combined in the page itself to play it on Tableau Public. And I think now I'll take over and we can walk through what this looks like. All right. So the first thing that we had to do was organize the data. And so what we had to do was we knew how many points in that graph we wanted. And so we needed to duplicate the lines by each of those points. And at the end, I'll explain why we had to do this. But in order to do that, all we did on the data sources was join our data set to a dummy data set that was just a number of 1 through 32, which we wanted 32 points. And that's this Tableau scroll bar data set. So if you scroll all the way to the end, you'll see that all we have is a key and then a point of 1 through 32 for every row in our data set. So the next thing was we needed to get a unique rank for every participant. And so to do that, we utilized the rank unique calculation along with a level of detail calculation on the player. And so the reason we needed to do this was the same reason why we duplicated that data set. So we duplicated it. We didn't want to just sum the total points. We needed to take the max per each player and then get the rank based on those two things. And interestingly, we have to take the max of that LOD for you to be able to use the rank unique. And the reason is, if you delete this, you'll see Tableau will not allow you to use a table calculation unless it's an aggregate calculation that's being plugged into the table calc. So because of this, we used max to get this calculation to work. So this gives us our ranking of each player. The next thing we wanted to do was get the X position. And that's where that player is going to live on that chart. And all we did here was take the rank and then subtract that point that we created, so that duplicated data source. And I added an extra 0.5 here to simply make it fit better on the chart. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take this X position and drag it onto the column shelf. And then we'll take player and add player to detail and text. I'll switch this to text so we can see it. And so you'll notice that everything gets bunched up here. So we'll need to change how our table calc is being calculated. And so we want to compute using each player. That way it cycles through and computes it per player instead of across all players at once. Well, in that case, it just bunched everything into one place. So then we'll add our points onto text as well. So we can see everything's here, but the formatting is a little weird because there's not enough space. So what we want to do is just fix this to a specific range. Let me change this point to the max. So now we can see the point and the max that everybody has, and I think I need to reverse this as well. And then what we want to do is take that point calculation and add it to the page itself. And then you can click play and it'll work like this. But there's a few other things we'd have to keep in mind. If I were to publish this to Tableau Public right now, we would not get the animations for a couple of reasons. First, animations are not turned on by default. So if you go to Format, Animations, you'll get this little pop-up window. There's a few options here. So you can turn them on by the entire workbook, or you can turn them on for a specific sheet. And you have a few things. So you can change the duration, and this is how fast that animation is gonna calculate. And then the style. So the style is either sequential or simultaneous. With sequential, you get the movement all at once, or you get the movement in stages. So it will calculate the new endpoint, shift, and then stop and sit for another second before it does the next one. If you get simultaneous, it'll just do all of the calculations at one time. The other thing we ran into was when we published it like this and tried to use the play button, we noticed the animations weren't working. And it ends up being that animations don't work with text marks. They have to be, there's a few things, they have to be a shape, a bar chart, and there's a few other ones that work, but text is not one of those. So to get around that, we simply changed it to a shape and then just minimize the shape to where you couldn't see it and change the transparency. So now there's a shape behind that, but you don't see it. And then if I were to publish this, you would get the full bar chart animation and actually get to see it cycle through the way you saw it on the dashboard.
Sweet, thanks, Travis. One last thing before we open up to questions, we wanted to shed light on like how we could bring this to our other work and to our clients, or to, you know, other fun projects that you might be working on. And some of the ideas that we thought of was first building out like an interactive org chart or a real-time process flow chart using the bracket that Travis demoed. And then using the score ticker that Travis just went through in building out a KPI ticker, you know, that goes through all important KPIs on a particular dashboard. So those were just a few ideas that we came up with. Obviously, there's a plethora, so be creative. And
Awesome.
Yeah,
Y'all.
now we'll open it up for Q&A if you have any questions.
With this, we got one in the chat window. It says, question, how was the skeleton set up in Tableau Public? I know that's basic, but I can't figure out how to save my life. So the skeleton, there we go.
Wait, sorry, can you ask that again?
So they were asking about the skeleton. I guess maybe they're talking about the bracket. Or hold on. Whoever
Was
asked
it the
that.
bracket or was it, I think maybe Marissa, he's talking about the top five here and then the scoreboard across the side.
Yeah, I kind of labeled that as a skeleton. Is that what is being referenced?
I think so. Jared,
Okay.
if you give us more detail, make sure that we got the right thing. But let's assume so for a minute.
Yeah, sure. So really I just built out a dashboard that included this top portion, the banner at the very top with the logos, the top five, and then the scoreboard over to the right. And then I just duplicated the tabs, and then I was able to change out, with the tiled aspect of a Tableau dashboard, this bottom left visualization, so that it gave that consistent feel as we cycled through the visualizations in our office TVs. So you got the same look and feel, no matter what dashboard it was showing, you could still see that important information, but you got some cool new aspects each time that it cycled. Was there like a specific question?
I think you
No, I
got it,
think
but
you
there
got
is
it.
another one.
Well,
We
yeah,
have another.
one more thing on that dashboard. I think we built this and that skeleton before the sheet swapping option was a thing. And so now I think there's an ability where you could click on this, and then on the left-hand side, you'll just be able to swap the sheet into that instead of having to actually manually go do it. So Tableau's kind of thought of that now for us instead of having to redo it every time.
That's awesome. We've got one more. We've got a question about, in the scroll ticker demo, would you get the same result putting the player pill on the row shelf to split out the level of detail instead of putting it on the details, like on the marks?
For that, you would not. So if you were to put it on the row shelf, what's going to happen is you'll get a row for every single player. And that's not what we wanted. We just wanted to list the players across the chart. So you can't put it on the row shelf. It would have to be in detail and in text.
We also,
I'll add to that too. One of the things as you get into the animation stuff and the racing charts and stuff like that, it's really tempting to kind of do the thing you normally think about, which is to put stuff on rows and columns. But as you end up having to put it in order to. And then one more question, Dr. Kevin Elder. Is asking about the
Allison, you're breaking up pretty bad, bud.
version of, he's saying that the one that's up there is take this year's.
Yeah, I think I got it. It was so the one on Tableau Public is last year's model.
Yes.
Yeah, this one is actually published up there as well. I think it's unhidden, but I can make sure that it's public, and we can send that link out with the deck.
Perfect. That's awesome. Any other questions for Travis and Marissa? All right, seeing none. Y'all really great stuff. Love seeing this. That scroll thing is really slick. So I know
I've never seen that. That was awesome.
Some jealous folks are going to be stealing that idea really fast. Super excited. Really appreciate you guys coming on and walking us through this. Really awesome stuff. virtual high five from us to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. So, Karen, you want to take us into our networking break?
Sure. Okay. So everyone knows where the restrooms are, right? And the snack. I'm just kidding. Okay. What we were thinking, we wanted to keep this interactive, and Anna Ford, who is part of the Women in Data panel that we're going to have in the second half of today's meeting, had a great suggestion that what if we did like a Kahoot quiz? If you guys have ever done those, it's like a fun game, it's interactive, you can get it on your phone and answer some questions. So I'll let Nathan and Anna, like if you guys want to share your screen and show everybody how to get out to it, we can do that during what would be our break, and then we'll get started with the Women in Data panel in, what do you say, Nelson, maybe like 10-15 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So, hey guys, my name is Nathan. I'm sharing my screen. This is Kahoot. If you've ever played Kahoot before, it's super fun. Look at you guys, you're already on it. So either on your phone or on your computer, probably on your phone is easier. Just go to kahoot.it. And then it'll ask you for a code. Put this code in and come up with a name, a player name. It will be shown, and there will be a prize at the end.
Appropriate names only.
Appropriate names only. No sketchy names, please. Are you guys able to hear the background music?
Loudly.
Loudly. Okay. Maybe
You can turn it down a little. Oh.
Oh. If only there was a way to turn it down. All right, so go ahead and get signed up. And if you need to take a bio break, now's the time. Go ahead and create join the party here, and then we'll circle back in a few to kick off our little trivia. All right, guys. So from what I heard, the background music might have been a little loud, but seems pretty straightforward. You guys are figuring it out. You're smart. We got 46 of the 117 signed up, ready to play. Nelson, Karen, I'll defer to you on if we should just jump in or wait a few more minutes.
I'll co-host with you. Let's
What
see.
do you guys
give
think?
them
Maybe
another
like,
minute. I say
yeah,
another-
okay, maybe
another
1 or
minute.
2 minutes.
Okay, cool.
So kids these days love this game.
It's so
And
fun.
Yeah, with like training, especially when we're going virtual for so many things, if you're hosting like a group of people, like your organization or your team, you may want to look into like just I have the paid version of Kahoot, but you can get a free version of Kahoot that's just simple little quick quiz questions. You could do something that's a poll, but it just gets people involved in thinking, and there is a little bit of a competition component because you want to be the quickest to answer the question. And so if you haven't played this, just so you know, the faster you answer the question, the more points you get. But of course, you don't get a second chance. So if you don't get the question right, you lose points. So there's a little bit of a way to game it once you get into it. I think each question here, you have 10 seconds, but they're pretty quick questions. So this will move fast. Just making sure we're using appropriate names only, guys. Well, teaching high school, that was something I ran into. I'd be like, you're off. You can't play.
Guys, our friend Ludo from the other hemisphere is on. Welcome, Ludo. Missed you, buddy. We met at Tableau conference this past year. He's in Ludo. Are you in Australia or New Zealand? I forget. I think it's New Zealand.
Don't insult the man. He's from New Zealand. Man's a keep.
New Zealand. If you guys have any work in New Zealand, Ludo's your guy. Send it to Ludo.
All right. So if we're playing along, we should be seeing what on our screen right now? Mine says you're in. Do you see your nickname on the screen? Is that right?
Yep.
Sweet.
Yeah. And so what you're going to do is once I hit start, the question will be on this screen, but the answer, the way you respond, will be kind of a 4-block kind of color-coded thing that corresponds to the answer on the screen. So the first time it might be a little weird if you've never played it, but after that, you'll get the hang of it. But so it'll be like a blue triangle and a red square, that kind of thing.
Some people are asking for the music to come back on.
Well, maybe we can make that happen.
Yeah, with the questions, we don't have to talk. We can have the music on and let y'all go.
True.
Yes.
All right, well, I'm getting told to get going. So you ready, Anna? Here we go.
Here for support.
All right. 8 questions. Get those fingers ready. Question number 1. How many years has ATOG been in existence? The faster you answer, the more points you get. All right. Wow.
7 seconds goes by quickly.
Nice.
It does. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's see.
Good.
Good job, Maddie.
Maddie
Ice.
Ice.
Some of you guys were paying attention in January.
Yeah, with those speed fingers. Let's see if Maddie Ice can hold. So where and when was Tableau the company founded?
That's a great question, Nathan. Woo, look at that.
Yeah, so it came out of Stanford 2003. Good stuff.
Ooh.
You guys ready? Get those fingers ready. Maddie Ice. Oh, lost the lead to Wendy. Nice, Wendy. Which of these 4 Viserati ladies has the most followers on Twitter? Is it Ava? Is it Lindsay? And Julie or Anya? Okay, okay. You know what's interesting? So Ava has over 10,000 more followers than any of the other 3. I don't know how, but good on you, Ava. She has 13,000 followers on Twitter.
Wait a second. So the answer was really Anya?
No, Ava.
Oh,
said
Eva.
good
Okay.
on
You said
you,
okay, sorry.
Ava.
All right. I call her Eva, so that threw me. Okay.
Oh, Eva. Okay. Ava. Paul.
Wow,
Man,
look at
Paul.
that. Fast fingers.
That a boy, Ludo.
All right, next question. Here we go. Which of these ladies is not a 2020? Is it Maria, Bridget, Lindsay, or Sarah?
Nice.
Maria Montessori was the
She started the
first-
Montessori schools.
female physician in Italy. Good times. Yeah, she's no longer living. It's okay. You can make up points in the next round.
Ooh, look at that.
Wow, Paul. Oh, Luda, my boy from
My
down
boy.
under. All right, here we go. Which version of Tableau gave us parameter action? All right. Some people know their Tableau and they paid attention last month. If you're new to the game, you want to play Kahoot.it, that's the pin. We're coming up on the last couple questions here. 6865991. Let's see. Ha! Ludo, strong, buddy. Ooh, Redette creeping in. All right, question number 6. How many different data connections are there in Tableau Prep? The latest version, current version, how many? There are 57. I literally went to the website this morning and counted them by hand. And I think it's always growing.
Is that where this question came from?
Yeah.
Nice. I was impressed. I thought you just knew it off the top of your head.
Oh, no, definitely not. Ludo, my boy. How are we going to get Ludo a prize? It's going to have to be a virtual prize. All right, which of the following is not a level of detail calculation in Tableau? All right, some people know their calcs. Good work, people.
Ooh, getting close. We got one more.
All right, Jacqueline, what you got? Here we go, last question. Which one of these women in data co-hosts does Tableau want to be podcast? All right. The podium. Oh, Jacqueline took the. Is it our Ludo? Ludo.
Well done.
Stop sharing. Good job, Ludo. That was fun. We should do that again.
That was really
I love that. Really good stuff. Awesome. All right. So now that we have gone through the beginning of our first sessions, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Karen, who's going to be our MC and leader for the Women in Data panel. Obviously, some of the strongest and great talent that we've got with the really excited about Karen, the conversation that you're going to help lead here to celebrate the month of March, Women's Month. And so hand the baton over to you and look forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Everybody can see my screen, right?
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So I've got some photos up of our 3 panelists, and just to kick off the discussion, we'll get started. We'll kind of into 3 sections, and everyone will, I'm thinking, just introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about what they do, who they are, where they work, and then we'll just go through a series of questions, and hopefully it leads to some good conversation. And if you have any questions that you'd like to pose, feel free to add them in the Q&A, and Nelson will be looking at that. I guess I'll go ahead and get started. Okay. I'll introduce myself. Karen, I know a lot of you, but I work at Chick-fil-A. I'm an analyst at Chick-fil-A in our financial services department. And in addition to working at Chick-fil-A, I am married and have 4 children, ages 1, 2, almost 3, 6, and 8. So I know a thing or two about being a wife and mom and working full time. And this situation that we're currently in now is definitely like putting probably the biggest strain, I guess, that like I've ever felt personally. Just I'm homeschooling 2 kids now and trying to like work and juggle all of it. So this discussion couldn't have even really come at a better time. I think this is like really highlighting a lot of that, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are like feeling that as well, men and women. Anna, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, I feel exactly that. I have 2 little boys, 5 and 8. And so I'm teaching kindergarten and 2nd grade all of a sudden, while trying to juggle all my work duties as well. I am the training director for Data Crunch. We are suddenly moving trainings to virtual, and I'm having to train trainers on how to teach virtually. So it's been a really, really cool experience to be able to morph and be able to grow in such a short time, but it's also very stressful, as you can imagine. And before this, I was actually a math and statistics teacher in the Atlanta area. I was, for 14 years, I taught math and statistics. So before that, before I went to grad school to be a teacher, I did work very, very briefly in like a consulting situation with data. And I'll talk about that later in some of my answers. But ultimately, it is very, like you said, the timing that we're going to talk about how our roles play in our job with regards to differences, similarities. I think this is an interesting discussion, especially for what we're going through right now.
Definitely. Stacy?
Hey, I'm Stacy Lynch. I also have kids that could run in the room at any second. I have a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old. And so it's an interesting time. I work at Cox Media Group, and my team is specifically responsible for analytics about digital products, data, revenue, audiences. And previous to that, I actually started out in academia at Northwestern University, and I did kind of more, conventional marketing research and consumer research and modeling and that kind of thing. And then my career's had a lot of turns. I've done consulting, and I've done product development, and I've worked in financial services and done a bunch of different stuff. But probably for the last few years, I've been working mostly with like bigger data, and I'm probably like 6 years with Tableau, I think. Yeah, so I'm really interested to hear what everyone has to say on this panel. I'm just going to say right now.
Excellent. And Kelly, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Gilbert. I'm a principal data engineer at Chick-fil-A with Karen. I support our HR and franchisee selection areas. Prior to coming to Chick-fil-A, I've been at Chick-fil-A about 7 years, and then prior to that, I spent about 10 years at Home Depot in various analytics roles and supply chain.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It's awesome to have you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the panelists doing this, like I said, and being so flexible and doing it virtually. I really appreciate it, and so does Nelson. Let's get started. A little bit about like our journey, like just to get where you are today. I'm going to focus questions now on kind of how you got where you are today. And first question, I'll direct this one to Stacy. And Stacy, what type of work were you doing earlier in your career? Could you just tell us a little bit about like earlier in your career, your journey to get where you are now?
Right. Well, I got so excited about this question, I answered it a little early, but I've done a lot of different kinds of stuff, and I've been at it long enough that I was working before I think data science was a thing, or analytics really was a thing. So I started off with more kind of market behavioral research, and that data came from, not from transactional data as much like we have now. It was from different sources. And so I started off with like more modeling and that kind of thing. And then in a lot of more mix of like qualitative and quantitative work. And then as my career has progressed, I've gone progressively more quantitative. I think in part because, you know, there's so much more available, and I've kind of gravitated toward those tools and doing that kind of stuff. So now pretty much what I do is, you know, quantitative metrics and analysis and dashboards all day long.
Excellent. All right, Anna, can you tell us maybe, or just describe like a point, any kind of inflection point in your career where maybe you felt drawn? You mentioned like you were in teaching earlier in your career. What was it like? Was there a certain point that made you like pause and pivot towards like working with data and information and data visualization?
So full disclosure, I previewed this question before, and I remember looking at going, this is a very hard question. I wanted to say, Karen, can we change it? And then I decided, no, I'll try to muddle my way through it, because I think it started not with data visualization. In fact, when I worked with what you would call data visualization, I didn't call it that. That's kind of a relatively new term for me. And so when I say data visualization, I still go back to my, statistics and bars and charts and graphs and things like that. So when I was in undergrad at UGA, I was a business major, and I gravitated more towards metrics and numbers, but I didn't, just like pretty much any undergraduate, you don't know what you're going to do. When I graduated, I worked for a consulting company in DC. It's actually a best practices research firm, if you really want to call it the right thing. And we were working with research. I was still like low man on the totem pole, working with survey data. Well, this is in between 2000 and 2002, when we weren't really talking data and metrics, but I was just fascinated with. I was always infatuated with analytics, but we didn't really call it that. We were just looking at statistics and numbers, and it was some modeling, very similar to what Stacy was saying. We modeled and we used survey data to draw conclusions about another, a larger population. And so when I went back to be a teacher, and that's actually kind of what prompted me, I actually kind of drove down the middle of the road of not necessarily math. When I went to grad school, I focused on statistics curriculum, which was being pulled into the math curriculum at a faster rate than it used to be. And so really it was just an interest that just came more and more apparent. So when I taught AP statistics, and when I taught statistics, the first rule of data with statistics, and I would tell this to my students, I said, well, the first thing you do when you get a set of data is, and they all know, you draw a picture. Well, that was the terminology I would use. I wouldn't say visualize it, which is funny because that makes sense. But we just said we would make a picture. We would either draw a histogram to look at the distribution of the variable, or box and whiskers, or all these charts and graphs helped people make sense of the data that they were trying to parse, and not just looking at the summary statistics. And that was what I was teaching. So if you can see, there was a little bit of a journey there, and not necessarily just a light bulb. And so when I was teaching AP statistics and I was trying to teach them how to work with data in a more reasonable way, I said, you're not going to walk into a corporate job with your TI-84 calculator and be able to go, oh, I can do this. So I taught them, I started teaching them how to work with Excel, and then that's how I found Tableau. And Tableau was really eye-opening for them too, because like, we can do this so much faster. Every AP exam question, every test question they had to answer about data, they had to support with a drawing of a graph, labeled axes and everything. Like, it was so important. So finding this world of people who found data visualization important as an important piece of understanding data was like this magical moment of, oh, there are other people who get this. So that's kind of the journey.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing. I've got a question now for Kelly related to, like, Kelly, your journey. Can you tell us or explain some about, like, what is the biggest challenge that you faced in developing your knowledge and skills in career?
Well, I think for career, the biggest challenge I've faced personally is that I'm not a self-promoter. And I think that sometimes, especially as a woman in a technical field, you have to be a self-promoter. And I think that's something that we can do for each other, is help promote each other. When you have a female coworker who does something cool, like, make sure, to let everyone know about that. Because I have trouble with that myself. And Karen, I know, is a great ally for me at work. I have other great allies at work that do that for me, but I generally do not have that innately. And then the biggest challenge, I think, in terms of knowledge and skills is just time, energy, and the pace of change. I'm not a mother, but it's especially difficult if you're also juggling family needs in addition to work and community activities. So I don't have that additional stressor, and I still find it difficult to find the time and energy to develop myself in addition to just normal work. So, but the thing is, as I've been in my career a long time, you just see patterns come up and they start to not scare you anymore because hey, I've done this before. So software changes, you change jobs, and you need to learn a new industry. It's just, you just learn it. And I think you don't become an expert overnight. And so just understanding that you need to start somewhere and do the regular consistent practice to get started. And I think we're all just the pace of change is just such at this point that we're all just continuous learners, and that's the mode we need to be in. And so just start somewhere, start at square one and get learning.
Definitely. One more question, and I'm going to direct this one to Kelly, because we'll kind of move in towards talking about like where we are today and like what we're doing now in our current roles and jobs at work. So Kelly, just like tell everybody what you enjoy most about what you do. You said you're principal data engineer. Just tell everybody, like, what is it about your job that makes you love what you do?
Well, my title is data engineer, but I work, I'm in an area of the business, which is HR, which is, we call it people, but it's traditionally been underserved from an analytics perspective. So I act as part data engineer, part data curator, and part business analyst. So the really fun part about my job, I have to juggle a lot of roles, but I also get to work all across the data lifecycle. So from getting data in from a vendor and building the pipeline to actually generating insights and building dashboards. So that's pretty fun, because what's really fun for me, whether I'm building a data pipeline to support another analyst to build a dashboard or whether I'm doing it myself, what I'm doing is helping people see their data for the first time, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I feel like that too. I feel like one of the most fun things about doing this type of work is just like right and left brain, like getting to think through the logic of what you're doing, but also just like there's a creative element. You're creating something from scratch. That's really fun. This next question is for Anna. In your opinion, are there differences, Anna, in the professional lives of women versus men? And if so, what are differences?
Yeah, so this is, again, like you said, in my opinion, in my experience, when I was a teacher, it's a very female-oriented profession. There were not been many males. And when one of us had a kid that got sick, that most of the time it was the mom to pick up. So, our male colleagues who'd like, hey, your wife gets to go do it, you know? But I mean, we kind of would joke, but there was an element of that. Now I have to say my husband is fantastic at sharing a lot of these duties, but I will say when the kids were really little in daycare, you know, I was the drop off and the pickup. And especially if I wanted them sooner, like if I wanted them to stay late at daycare, daddy could pick them up, but you know, that was like that kind of additional thing. Now this is, I'm speaking from a mother point of view. Now from a woman point of view, you know, that there's so many elements we could get into here. So I'm just gonna, I kind of wrote down a few things. I think professional expectations are still different. You know, how we come across at the boardroom, if I say something pointed versus if a male says it the same way, we can be misread completely. There's a lot of different layers to the way the expectations are laid out for males versus females. I do believe it's getting better, but in the data world, we're still seeing it's a more male dominant world. I was actually hung up on by somebody I was interviewing to be a trainer because he thought it was the wrong number because he didn't expect there to be a female boss. So we're seeing things played out in different ways, but ultimately I would say, and you know, how we have to manage our career and we have to manage things, I see it a lot different from how my husband gets to go to his day to day.
No, absolutely. Stacy, so a question for you. Do you feel there is an issue with gender parity in the tech industry?
I think there is. I mean, the tech industry, it's a big field and there's a lot of different parts of analytics, and some places are better than others and some companies are better than others for sure. But I think it's still pretty true that there's just, the numbers are still skewed more heavily toward men, and even to the point where I was at the Google Next conference recently, and they started converting the women's bathrooms into men's bathrooms because there were just so many more men at the conference that they had to stand in line at the bathroom. And so it's not just like perceptions, it's not just surveys, it's like a real thing that sometimes you're just in rooms with one woman or, you know, maybe two, you know, it still happens, especially in more technical areas. I think where I see kind of the way that it sort of plays out is, you know, I think anytime you have sort of one group that's way more represented or more represented, you know, if you're not in that, you can kind of have a burden of proof sort of that you carry around with you. And I think in analytics, even though it's numbers and you can prove everything you're doing, there's a lot of trust that goes in that the person who's giving you some information, especially if it's not results that you want to hear, that they know what they're doing. And you really, unless who's going to QA every piece of code you do? Nope. You know, so there's a lot of like reputation that's actually really important in analytics to get the more high profile and high importance assignments. And I think sometimes there can be a drag, and it can take a little bit longer to establish your reputation, to be really on the front, to get those top assignments. And I think I've personally seen, and not just, you know, with myself, that sometimes there's there's an extra burden of proof put toward women, especially in some of the more technical fields, that to really show that they have the competence, and that's not always, you know, that's not always required from other people. And so I think it's there, and I think I especially, so if you just get into like middle and senior management, you can also see it play out where there's there may be a tremendous number of very talented women in the early stages of their career, and then it just kind of narrows, I think, pretty substantially, at least, you know, in what I've observed directly.
Yes. All right. I have a question for Kelly. Kelly, what do you think the greatest hindrances to gender parity are? Have you had any experiences that made these obstacles maybe like real for you, or have you seen them have negative impacts on the lives of others?
Well, so since I work in the HR space, we kind of talk about these things as pipeline issues, which is getting good candidates in, and retention issues, which is keeping them. And so when I think about getting women into technology, you know, part of it's a pipeline issue. Are women learning about being exposed to these career options when they're young, like before they're going to college? Are they feeling comfortable when they're there? You know, we hear a lot about kind of the sexual harassment issues that happen in the data science like PhD pipeline, and you know, a lot of women are just giving up because they don't want to deal with it. And when I think about it, we've made a ton of progress since I was in college. When I was in engineering school, my first programming class, I was one of 6 females in a class of over 100. So we've made a lot of progress since then, but you know, like you're just not always comfortable because you're the other, you know, or to Stacy's point, there are so many opportunities to be seen as less competent than your male colleagues. Exactly what Stacy was talking about, where the way I've seen this play out for me in roles I've had in the past is I used to call it bringing your credentials. Like I just had to prepare. I had to prepare for every meeting and bring my credentials. So every meeting I was in, I needed to think about why I was valuable and like basically be prepared to defend my resume for a small, you know, basic project. Whereas my male colleagues would just say like, oh, I'd like to help with that. And there were no questions asked. But with me, it's like, well, do you know how to do that? Have you ever done that before? That kind of assumption of competence is one of those things that just kind of makes you feel uncomfortable. So that I think it causes women to exit the pipeline and then also exit once they're in the industry. So I think that's really one of the biggest things is just being, you know, being othered while you're in the role. And then also there are just things that particularly impact women, particularly around family. So again, I'm not a mother myself, but I know my fellow panelists can talk about this. You know, if you are a manager or a business owner and just think about your policies and how they might affect people with families. So leave policies, flexible work assignments, things that you know, make women feel comfortable and not have to ask for things that are different from their male colleagues.
Yeah, I think it was Anna, maybe it was you, like making the point that there's so many, you know, when you were working in teaching, how many female coworkers. I mean, I go to the kids' elementary school and there's like one male teacher I think I've ever seen over there, and he's the coach, like he's the PE teacher. And I think the reason for it, like at this point, perhaps women do hear about these types of jobs, data, technology, you know, like these roles. It's like, I think people know about them now, and perhaps there's just as many women interested as there are men. However, until like caring for family members is like 50-50, until that's genuinely like split between, you know, like the expectations are genuinely like my husband will get the kids just as often as I get the kids and all of those things, it makes me think like perhaps we'll continue to see like teachers, for instance, predominantly female, just because it's the type of role that you can have and have kids and you're always off when they are. You know, I think that really appeals to whoever the primary caregiver is. Would you guys agree? I'll ask one more question. I think I have maybe like one or two more in this little portion. And I'll say this to Nelson, if you're listening, and if there are any questions coming through and there is a good point to ask them, feel free. You can interrupt me or us or whatever. And if there's like a good spot to ask them, feel free.
Yeah, we got one for later, but we'll hold off.
Okay, no problem. This next one is for Anna, and it's, what's the best advice you've received and how did you apply it to your work?
Unmute. There you go, unmute. Hard question because, well, at my age, I've had a lot of good advice. Gonna have to go ahead and tell you, there's a lot of advice I didn't take when I was younger. But I would say more recently and ongoing, has to do with career change. I've had a couple career shifts here and there, if you didn't notice. I would say broadly, you don't know what you don't know. So ask questions, talk to people. You cannot live in a bubble, and this is males and females, that this is the best advice I ever got, because I wouldn't have known that Tableau existed to be the next step in my career had I not asked people questions of, well, what do you use in your day-to-day to help you work with analytics? Because I have to teach my students how to get a job later. And it was just this, you know, a friend of mine, she worked for Marketo, and she's like, well, we use Tableau. And I'm like, what's this thing? I'm going to download it. So it was just one thing after another, asking people questions. I like to quote, my pastor is Andy Stanley. So if you're in Atlanta area, you might know who this is. He said, be a student, not a critic. And I think this kind of follows along, really, like, be a student, listen, have an idea of what other people's perspectives are. And because again, you don't know what you don't know, right? You only have your own perspective. You only have your own seat from wherever you're sitting. And he gave the quote, it's from Sam Harris, but Andy Stanley is the one I got that quote from. He quoted Sam Harris and said, pay attention to the frontiers of your ignorance. So I feel like we can all be better people, moms, teachers, students of the world, if and invest in our career, their path, journey, wherever you are, if you can kind of step back and listen to what you don't know and ask questions and learn from other people.
That's great. This question is kind of more for everybody, so we can just take turns, but I'll start. Stacy, if you want to take it first. At this point in your career, what do you think your most impactful contribution has been?
Well, where I'm at now, I think I spend a lot of time developing analysts and hiring. We tend to hire really young analysts at my company. In fact, I have an opening right now if anybody wants to switch jobs. Anyway, and I think that I've done some things, I think, specifically to change how I hire in a way that I didn't intend for it to really be an advantage to women specifically, but it has been an advantage to women. We used to do like more of a conventional kind of hiring thing where people came on site, you know, we do that. And what I found was that the initial hiring phases were bringing in a lot of people who could talk a lot, but who didn't really have the core skills. And what we found was that women were consistently understating their actual skills and what they would do. And if you asked them to rate themselves on a scale of 1 to 5 in their competence in, you know, in SQL or in statistics or whatever, they were always giving themselves a 2 or a 3. And then some other candidates were, they were a 4 or a 5. And those were the people that were being brought in. So we switched to a virtual hiring model where rounds 1 and 2, we never saw who the people were, and we actually had them showing us their work and really doing it. And it totally changed the kinds of people that ended up in our final round interviews, because it was people who could actually do the work, and they would talk about it, and we would see the passion, and I think it really fundamentally changed sort of who we were getting in our positions. And I think it's changed, you know, and so I feel proud of having, you know, I can't say I was smart. I just, you know, we were just, please God, let's not have another interview with somebody who in the first 30 minutes, we knew they didn't know what they were talking about. But it's ended up really creating a different kind of mix for my group all together. So I'm really proud of that. That's what I spent my time doing.
That's awesome. Same question, Kelly.
So the longer I've been in my career, the more I've realized that the legacy I'm going to leave is other people. It's not necessarily what I've done. Now that I've been in career for a little while, I can see all of the young analysts that I've mentored or trained over the years, and you know, they've proliferated out to various companies, different parts of the companies that I've worked at. And it's been really fun to watch their growth and know that I was a little bit of a part of that. You know, helping them on their way, you know, and they often will come back to me on LinkedIn and thank me for something that I taught them. So I've just realized over time that it's about sharing your knowledge and not just you being the best, but helping other people be the best. And so Chick-fil-A founder Kathy had a saying, how do you know if someone needs encouragement? It's if they're breathing. And I think that's a really good thing to remember. Everybody starts somewhere. I saw this on a blog a long time ago, and I wish I could remember. It was a data science blog, and the blogger was actually a female, and she said, you know, she struggled with starting a blog because she didn't think that she was an expert enough to start a blog, but she got some advice that was, you're not blogging for experts in the field, you're blogging for you 6 months ago. And I thought that was really great advice, no matter what you're doing, whether it's blogging or thinking about speaking up at work or helping someone with a dashboard. There's always somebody who was you 6 months ago. So you always have something to add. So just encourage people, you know, maybe somebody is 6 months earlier in their journey, and you can just encourage them and give them resources and, you know, just tell them, hey, you're doing a great job. I was there once too. So I think just realizing encouragement and teaching and mentoring are really important.
Absolutely. Anna, same question.
Very similar answer to Kelly. So first of all, I thought of this question and I was thinking impactful to who? Because if I can't really measure other people, but I can measure myself. And so I feel like what's impacted me the most is teaching. Whether that be kids, whether that be adults, because I teach adults now, whether that be my blogging. And it's not that I feel like, oh, I gave somebody something. It's that every time I teach, I feel like I get something new from someone else. And I mean that when I learn something, somebody else opens my eyes up to another resource. But I also just feel that completion, you know, I feel whole when I can help somebody else out, and I'm not trying to humble brag there at all. Just, but it's that feeling when I can teach, when I can help somebody through something, whether it be in a formal classroom setting, whether it's just, hey, let's walk through this little trick problem you have and figure out a way together to solve it. Because to me, that makes me feel like my life is complete. I'm doing the thing I'm here to do. Just checking boxes, developing a dashboard will never be that for me. But when we can work together as a team and learn from each other, that is the incredible experience for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay.
Real quick, there was a question that came in for Stacy around what the role was that she had that was available on her team. So Stacy, if you give us a couple of details on that for the audience.
I think you're on mute.
I was so excited, I forgot to unmute myself, sorry.
There you go.
It's a digital product and consumer analyst position on my team, and it uses Tableau every day. If you're interested, just find me on LinkedIn and let's connect, and I can send you, and also I can send it in the question in the chat or something. I can send a link to the position also. I'm excited if somebody's interested.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for asking, Nelson. All right, my next few questions are more about like shaping the future for women in data, like to the future, like to come. So this one's kind of for Stacy. Stacy, how can we adjust? You kind of touched on this already, but
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, it was kind of like a good spot in two different questions, but maybe how can other companies like learn from what you did and adjust hiring practices to ensure that women are hired into tech positions, at least at the level and salary where they deserve based on like the actual work that they're doing?
So a couple of things. I talked about kind of moving toward more evidence-based interviewing, because I think if you really are talking about what skills people have and what they can do, that levels the field in the right way. Because now it's not, you know, it's really people being able to show what they can do. I think also this is, I expect every person I extend an offer to, I shouldn't say this on this form, but I expect a little negotiation. And I think women should expect to negotiate for salary right out of the gate. and never feel tentative about it. And if I have somebody who doesn't negotiate when I extend them an offer, I'm usually a little surprised. I expect a little bit of that. And I also as a leader, work hard to make sure that, especially when I bring in young people into their first job, that I level them correctly and fairly. And you really have to assume that everybody's going to know what everybody else makes, and work hard. And I see sometimes that's the first part where women get a little bit behind, and then it's harder and harder to make that up once you get into that initial, because you get that percent on top of whatever it is, and we can all do math here. And it just, if you start lower, it's a harder place. And I think that as frontline managers who are hiring, we have a real opportunity to bring about a lot of equality that lasts for somebody's entire career. You can make that difference right out of the gate for them. And I think one last thing is we do, Kelly talked about it, this kind of expecting people to kind of bring you their credentials, or sort of this burden of proof. I think we all every day can just check that and just say, if you kind of assume that people are competent and, or everyone is competent, it's actually a much better and more healthy way of beginning any working relationship. And I think it allows you to see things that you might be a little bit blind to otherwise. So that's what I think.
Definitely. And one thing I would just encourage, like, not just women, but perhaps if you feel, if anyone is out there and feels maybe like an underdog, or that they have to like bring their credentials or prove themselves, I think some of what Tableau has done with like Tableau Public, it's like a portfolio online. If you have the skills and are looking to like make a name for yourself with what you do every day, you can put your work out there, and it becomes very clear to people that you could be man, woman, whoever you are. Like, it's very obvious to see like who knows what they're doing and who is who's really good at what they do. So definitely like take advantage of Tableau Public if you haven't already. I do think that's a really good way to showcase your skills and like prove yourself if you want to. I'll direct this next question to Kelly. What do you think we should do collectively to create more opportunities for women to build careers in technology?
So when we think about it as a pipeline problem and also a retention problem, when we think about pipeline, it's about knowing what's available and also knowing it's for you. When I was in high school, my calculus teacher told me, Kelly, if you don't study engineering, I don't know what you're going to do. And it wasn't until that point where I really thought that that was something I could do, because boys go to engineering school. So having somebody tell me like, this is for you. And my dad also was in a STEM career and, encouraged me to explore curiosity about technical things. And, there's that element of knowing that it's for you is really important. So we need to make sure that girls and women, especially girls that are pre-college, know the breadth of technology careers that are out there. It's not just writing code. It's not like sitting at a desk with your headphones on, cranking out code, right? It's there's a wide variety of data careers out there. And especially when you think about data visualization, particularly all the variety of backgrounds just that this panel comes from, that, bring us to this work. So, one, we need to make sure it's a thing that it's possible for you to do. And second of all, you need to kind of, be encouraged and know that this is a thing you can do. So one thing that I'm personally doing, Andy Piper and Crystal Myers, you probably all know them. We're partnering with an organization called Girls Plus Data that brings hands-on data camps to middle school girls. And the idea is to expose middle school girls to the breadth of data careers that they could have, and actually get hands-on with tools like Tableau and Data Robot. So we're pretty excited about that. But that helps with the pipeline side of it. Like, okay, let's let you know what's out there, and let you know it's for you. But then retention, right? Like Stacy mentioned, make sure that we're evaluating competence equally. I find I try to check myself when I'm assuming someone doesn't know what they're talking about. I try to check myself and think, why do I think that? Like, what evidence? We're all data people, right? What evidence do I have to back that up? So I think just making sure that we're evaluating people fairly and evenly, and not just assuming somebody doesn't know what they're doing. I think Stacy said it really well. You know, let's assume everyone's competent and let them prove themselves otherwise. You know, that's something my current boss does. You know, he'll ask me to do something, and I'm like, oh, you think I know how to do that? And it makes me feel really, really good whether I do or don't. But I think that's really important, making sure that we're evaluating people equally, and so women don't have that extra stress of bringing their credentials. Because the thing about bringing your credentials is you might have the credentials, but when you have to prove your point, prove that you have the credentials and fight to get on that project, to say like, hey, I am good at this, and here are all the certifications that I have to prove that. Now that I've made the argument in favor of myself, now I have the pressure to be perfect, because I better not mess up because I told everyone I could do this. You know, whereas my male colleagues might just say like, oh, hey, I'll help with that. And they may or may not do it well, but nobody's really judging them by that really difficult standard. So I think, you know, if we're making sure that we're assuming competence unless proven otherwise, and evaluating equally, that will help a lot with the retention side. And then also, you know, just making sure that women have the same development opportunities, regardless of whether or not they're mothers, you know, that we don't lose women mid-career because, you know, it's difficult weighing family responsibilities with work. And then, you know, another thing we can do with retention is just stick up for women. I had a coworker, you know, and I was in a situation where I was being thought of as less than competent. I was in a meeting where we were talking about kind of the state of Tableau server for our department, and I talked about the dashboard that I had built, which is by far and away the most viewed in our department, and I kind of got challenged about, well, it's just static, you know, you should really have your male coworker show you how to schedule that so that it updates every day. And I was just like shell shocked. I didn't know how to explain that. Actually, I do know how to do that, and I taught him. But after that meeting, my male coworker came to my office, and he says, I don't know why he said that to you, Kelly. You're way smarter than I am. And you know what would have felt really great is if he would have stuck up for me in the moment. And you know, he was early in career, and I wouldn't have ever expected him to do that. But you know, when you see situations like that, like if you can stick up for your female coworkers and just say like, hey, she's good at this. She knows how to do that. And she taught me, you know, but just stick up for each other and stick up for your female coworkers when you see stuff like that happen.
That's a great point. But yeah, Anna, what advice do you have for women who want to enter or progress in the field?
So kind of to echo a little bit what's already been said, first, I'm a big fan of advocating. So advocating for each other, but also advocating for yourself. So this kind of mimics a lot of what we said, but you know, we've talked, kind of brushed around the idea of this whole imposter syndrome. I mean, it's not just females that have this, but I would say that I hear it a lot from, we think, well, we don't, if I know it, then everyone else does. And then that's actually just not true. We need to double down on our strengths. We know something, and it's a good thing to know, and we can do this, and jobs are looking for people who can do this. You get out there and you advocate for yourself, and don't compare yourself to the next person, and don't think you can't, because you can. So that would be the advice I give. I had to shift careers very recently and ran into this myself. So I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I suddenly looked at this whole broad spectrum of data science, and I'm like, well, I know this, but I don't know any of that. Well, that's actually just a trick of the brain, because what you know, that information is a strength. And sometimes we need to double down on the thing that we know, and the thing that we know we do well, and be able to play into that. So for me, it was communicating data and working with teaching people to not only calculate things and learn to digest statistics and data situations, but also to communicate those things. Well, I thought, well, I can do it, anybody can, but that's actually not true. And it's a very, very needed skill set. And so just advocate for yourself, double down on your skill set, because that's your skill set and that's not somebody else's. And then don't compare yourself to somebody else just because they know something that you don't, because guess what? You also know something they don't. So to me, that was an important realization of, like I said, I changed careers. And I do need to add that when I was changing careers, I was told multiple times, what are you going to do? You're just a teacher. And that's intimidating, but it also kind of made me, if you know my personality, I'm like, all right, well, hold my beer and watch this. I think we should all have that drive inside of us, your own cheerleader. And as females, we're not taught that. We're even taught, I taught math. We're taught we're not good at math. We're taught that it's a boys' subject. We're taught that this is a man's world. So we're growing up against this brick wall of what we can and can't do. So being advocates for ourselves, as well as what Kelly says, for each other, is so vital to get this moving in the direction we want it to go in.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm all about having the attitude of like, I will prove you wrong, because I think that's just really important. 100% agree. Stacy, do you have any suggestions for women regarding successfully, like how to successfully promote or advocate for themselves in their career, like for a promotion or for a pay raise or any situation they might find themselves in where perhaps we've all been there and you feel a little uncomfortable? Kelly talked about it earlier, but I think this is particularly the case a lot of times for women. So do you have any specific like tips or tricks or suggestions?
Well, I think what Anna was just saying about valuing what you have and what you've done, I think is so important. And I think if you don't have a good sense, I mean, it's usually like a two-part thing, right? You want to, if you don't really know where you stand or what it's going to take to be really successful, you should feel bold enough to ask. It's not unreasonable to say to people who are successful in your organization, people who are successful ever, what did you do that was really important, and help me kind of figure out what I need to do if you're at that point. And then once you've actually done it, I think we're all data and evidence driven people. And I think you applying the same, if you were making an argument for someone else, applying that to yourself, and bringing the numbers, bringing what you've done, bringing the results you've had, I think is really is super important. And if you find that and I think I would do that not only for like compensation and new positions, but also for projects. Ask for projects that you want, that are interesting to you, that are on things that are important to your company. I think in particular, things that have a revenue component are one of the biggest catalysts for people's careers. If you're gravitating toward more like expense or optimization things, sometimes that can be a harder play to get those really big the really big opportunities. But then if you've gone through that and you feel like you've made a good case for yourself, and there's, if anybody is interested in, I'm happy to offer more, one-on-one conversation about what this is like, because I've been on both sides of this. If you've done that and your company and your leader hasn't responded in a way that you think is great, sometimes that's a sign that you may need to find a different place to work to, because there's this other part that there's some really great companies out there that are great employers that give you a lot of opportunities, and there's some places that aren't so great. And don't, if you've gone through this process and you feel like you've really made a legitimate case and you're not getting where you need to, it's a big world. It's a really big world, and there's a lot of stuff out there. And if you believe in yourself and have a certain boldness, I think that's going to be the way that you move forward.
Sorry, I got stuck on unmute. Okay. Last question. This is my last one for everyone. So I just want us to take turns going through these ones together. We can start with Kelly, maybe. What guidance would you have for women? So any women, girls that are watching who want to build their personal brand as a leader in data and analytics, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm probably the least qualified person on this panel to answer this. As I stated, I'm not a very good self-promoter, but the things that I've found that have worked really well for me in my career is be willing to help. That's how you get exposure. Volunteering to work on projects, cross-functional projects, especially. To Stacy's point, if you find that you're in a situation where you're not having kind of the upward development opportunities that you would like to have, You know, do you have opportunities to work on cross-functional projects where you'll get exposed to other departments and you can show them what you can do? That's a great way. Just helping in general, right? Like helping your coworkers, being visible and, you know, showing what you know by helping others, right? So if your colleagues have questions and you can answer them, then people realize you know what you're talking about. But at the same time, you're helping your coworkers. So definitely help volunteer for projects and then practice, right? Keep up your own skills. You know, I hate having to, you know, when you feel like you have to bring your credentials, but you also want to have credentials, right? So, you know, you can use Tableau Public to participate in any of the visualization challenges like Workout Wednesday or Makeover Monday, or whatever, you know, Kaggle competitions if you're more of a data scientist. There's the Prep and Data Challenge if you're on the data prep side. So, you know, just participate in those activities, and particularly Tableau Public, just as Karen stated, it helps you build your portfolio, right? So you can use that as you practice to show what you know.
Same question for Anna. You want me to repeat it? Or do you remember? I'm asking, what guidance would you have for women who want to build their personal brand as a leader in data and analytics?
So my answer is going to be a little bit not enterprise level, but more just global, based on what I've learned and what I've done. So for me, it helped. Again, I was changing careers, so I had to build a brand, and to do that took a lot of putting myself out there. I started using Twitter more for Tableau, as Kelly talked about Makeover Monday. Just put yourself out there sometimes. You can, you don't have to necessarily put all your work out there at once, but you can be part of the conversation. And don't be necessarily critical. You need to be part of the positive conversation. We can all be very positive. Having that Tableau Public, Josh is going to say it again, Tableau Public, he's over here chatting every time it says, and Tableau Public is a fantastic place to start building, there you go, building your brand as well. If you're in the Tableau world, or just in data in general, there are a lot of opportunities out there to have a public profile. Personally, having a blog helped for me as well, but you can also use LinkedIn is a great tool that you can start having conversations and dialogues. Some people have just a video blog on LinkedIn where they're talking about the thing of the day. For me, it worked to have a blog that showcased my how I broke down statistics and these concepts to kind of explain it in a little different way that I had been doing for my students, but now I'm explaining it for adults. So that I have that the Twitter hashtag, like my handle was Stats Ninja, because I created that like when I was a stats teacher, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh, you're Stats Ninja. I'm like, well, I guess that's my brand, and just gonna go with it. So that was what my my blog became. But you don't have to have like a, you know, hey, this is my label, but you do need to put yourself out there a little bit more, and then believe in yourself that what you're doing and what you're saying all speaks to who you are. And then that's kind of the final thing is be cohesive. Try to make sure you're saying the same thing. Figure out in the beginning, like, what is your brand? Who are you? What do you want to represent, or what do you want to be known for, really? What's your why, as Simon Sinek would say? Because at that point you can kind of make those decisions along the way that help build your brand based on this big idea of who you are.
Exactly. All right, Stacey, your last one. Do you want me to repeat it?
No, I've got it. I thought, well, I was mentally taking a lot of notes from what Kelly and Anna said. There were so many great ideas. I guess just the last thing I'll say is that that if you know, I love what Kelly was talking about helping and getting involved and you know, making things better. And I think that that if you can, you know, if you can bring, you know, really making things better and really adding to every group that you're in, I think that's so powerful, and that speaks for you. But I guess the only thing I'll just add to this is there's actually there is such a big field. I love whenever I see somebody truly being themselves. There's so many different kinds of ways to be authentically great in this field. And I think if you don't feel like you have to be somebody else, or that you have to be a certain kind of like Silicon Valley type or something, there's so many ways to be great at this. And I think having that confidence that you can be a whole different kind of, you can be so different from your colleagues and still be bringing things, making every project you work on better, helping, answer really important questions. And I think having that authentic feeling and really, remembering for yourself when you're doing that is so important. And then, and my hope is that we see more and more different kinds of people in the field that we're in, and just like more, just more diversity of thought and a background. And I think there's just a lot of opportunities for that. And so, and Anna and Kelly talked about so many great ideas for how to express that and to bring that to other people too, which those are great.
Definitely. I will say, like, last thing, and then let's take any questions anyone might have. But if you ever find yourself in a position of leadership in data and analytics, and you have the opportunity to reach out and like lift somebody else up, just remember that, and how much, like, how meaningful that can really be to someone. I know I had like the opportunity of meeting Ken Fleur-Lodge, who's now a Tableau Zen master, but I got talking to him at a data night out at one of the Tableau conferences like years ago. I knew who he was because his stuff I've been downloading it on Tableau Public all the time. And so we just kind of talked a lot at a data night out, and that was that. And then we follow each other on Twitter. But like probably 2 years ago, he reached out just on his own and direct messaged me and offered, it was like the Iron Viz season, which I've never participated in and really don't have any desire to. But he reached out and took it upon himself to say, like, hey, if you want any help, like if you're considering doing this, I would be glad to help you. Like, I'll help you. I'll look over your stuff. Like, he just offered to kind of be like a mentor, and that like really meant a lot, even though I didn't take him up on it, even though it's just not my thing. I think that can be really meaningful when somebody that is in has made a name for themselves can like reach out to others and just try to like lift them up and help them any way they can. Nelson,
yeah, shout out to Ken. He has personally reached out to me, and I know of many other women. He's a great champion for women in the Tableau community. I know of lots of people have had experiences where he's reached out to us one-on-one to just be encouraging, encouraging you to be part of a conversation or to get involved in some way. So shout out to Ken.
For sure. Yeah. And maybe he doesn't even realize like how much that really means to anybody. I'm sure he probably forgot it, but it like just definitely like stuck out to me as something like he really didn't have to do. I remember thinking like, you know who I am? This is crazy. Like it was really cool. But I think that means a lot to people, and just never underestimate like how much that means to somebody. Cause it really just like is very encouraging. Do we have any questions, Nelson?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple. So ladies, first off, thank you all so much. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and just really appreciate your transparency, your thoughts, your wisdom that you've shared with the group. Hopefully y'all can actually hear me. Apparently, I didn't realize it earlier, but apparently I was unhearable. So we'll have to deal with that later. Does everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up if that's working. Okay, good. All right, so so the first question that we wanted to come back to was from Josh Preston. So Josh mentioned a book, and he said, have any of the panelists read Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men? And if so, he'd be really interested in any experiences you could speak to, or just your thoughts on the book.
I haven't read it, but it sounds great. I haven't read it. Has anyone else?
I haven't either, surprisingly, but it's definitely on my list.
Another one that's on my list is, ever since the last Tableau conference, the book that they shared like in the beginning, they had the author. I've been wanting to read that one too.
Oh, I think it's Quiet. Susan
No,
Cain.
not the quiet one, although that one would be good too. But
Oh,
the book
code
called
breaking.
the Code Breakers.
Yes,
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
that one.
Yeah, that would be fascinating as well. Let's see here. There's another question. Anna answered this, but be curious if there are any other thoughts on this one around getting going with the social media stuff, how to make connections with the Tableau community, even apart from social media, kind of building that brand. And, one thing that I think is interesting, and be interested in your thoughts, ladies, I think there's a lot of different avenues to build a brand. I think you can have a public brand and do the Twitter and the LinkedIn type of stuff, but I think you can have an internal organizational brand. You kind of become known as the person who's the go-to for this and whatnot. And just your thoughts on how you can do one or the other or both in your careers.
I saw the question about, and it's sort of like, how can you do this without using social media? I'll be totally honest that if you don't have a basic LinkedIn profile, that's super important. And you don't have to be out there putting a lot of personal information, but I do think you need at least a basic summary of your experience and some connections that demonstrate that you're a real person who exists in this field. And so I think if there's a way you can find like a comfortable place to do that, I think that's really important. I personally find that LinkedIn is not a super great place. I don't actually appreciate a lot of the requests and contacts I do get through LinkedIn, mostly because they're from vendors trying to sell me things, and they're sometimes super aggressive and all of that. So I am very happy if somebody emails me. You have to do a little bit more legwork, but I think there's also a lot of industry events where I'm really happy to talk to people and we keep in touch. And I think you've heard a lot of people talking about just the power of somebody coming up and talking to you is so tremendously powerful. But again, you're going to have to do a little bit more work if if you're not at an event and you're not messaging directly through LinkedIn to find somebody's email address or anything like that, especially if you're honest and about that you're trying to get going and get advice. I think most people will respond really positively. That's my thought.
Yeah, it does feel like
Stacey, I think that's spot on. Go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say, everyone I know like has just such different levels of like comfort with social media in general. Like I really don't use it much outside of Tableau, so I can kind of understand where maybe that person's coming from, and that like maybe they just don't really like to be online putting a lot of stuff out there. I will say that I think it is important to just decide like what you want your brand to be. And if you're going to make a name for yourself, if you're going to be going to work every day and trying your best and trying to be the best at what you do, like what is it that you want to be known for? And even if it is just internally, like how is it that you can do those things? And it's a lot of like what folks have talked about today, but like Stacey, the volunteering to do things that get your work out there, like more visible projects, even if it is just internally, I think that goes a long way too.
So another question we had coming in references for the other half of our audience, or no, let me rephrase that. Apologies. As leadership looks at breaking these barriers down, with the help of women on both sides, women in leadership, men in leadership. What is some advice for having what it can be somewhat awkward conversations in the workplace? I know we talked about kind of putting yourselves out there and having kind of taking a risk and whatnot. And so, what are some of the things that if you're the one who is in the leadership position, how can you kind of make a safe place for those conversations? Any great advice on creating that safety where you can have a difficult or what can be sometimes an awkward conversation in this environment?
It's just maybe a situation where you're having to give someone difficult feedback I'm going to go with that assumption and just say, you know, just approach it as an evidence-based problem, right? Make sure that we're talking about, you know, a specific behavior that, or a specific action that was not as expected, and just make sure it's not about that person's behavior in particular, but like that they are doing something that is outside of expectations. And especially if you have policies or something you can reference, or you know, stated materials or project requirements that weren't met or something like that. But just try to make it evidence-based, because I think especially in the technical field, we respond to that pretty well. But just make sure that it's not, that it doesn't appear personal, and make sure that it's, you know, as evidence-based as possible.
Any more questions?
I do not see any additional questions. Awesome. All right. So again, ladies, really grateful for your time as you've put all this together. I think there's been some absolutely awesome insights. Some of the stuff that I'm taking with me is, you know, just to help people speak up and to be an encouragement, and to, you know, when you see excellence in the workplace, regardless of male, female, to call it out and to draw attention. And then I thought the point around, you know, if you see somebody who's engaging the conversation the wrong way and saying, hey, you know, in that moment to speak up, and to, again, going back to that concept of having a safe place, and if you can help give somebody, you know, some authority in that moment, you know, how valuable that is for the relationship and whatnot. And I think ultimately, if we would all do so much better if we just focus on relationships to cheer for one another and to uplift one another, as opposed to, you know, thinking of people as male, female, and whatnot. It's, you know, my goal in what I do is to help create leaders, male, female, in this space, and super excited about the next generation and the amazing talent that is coming up in this space right now. So really grateful for all of your insights and excited about what the future holds. Karen, anything else for us?
I just want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys just being a part of this. The answers were just so thoughtful, and hopefully all this went pretty well. I mean, thanks, Anna, also for the Kahoot. Nathan, I really love that. Great music choice also. But it was cool. Like, this really was like a bright spot in my day. I really needed this week. And I know for everybody, like, you didn't have to get on this. No one would have known if you were on it or off it or whatever, but like choosing to make this, you know, carve out time in your day, like, thanks. I really appreciate it. It was pretty fun.
Awesome. So to wrap up, Karen, do you have that slide with the leadership, the book club thing? Give people one more chance at that. And while Karen's pulling that up, just a quick reminder, hopefully we'll all be back in person the third Thursday in April. If not, then, you know, we will certainly see everybody back on computer screens and whatnot. We would love to be engaging with you for the next few weeks, with the opportunity around the leadership book club. So hopefully that's something that would be interesting to you. If you have any questions on that, obviously reach out. And with that,
Nelson, I don't have it, but share your screen if you want to pull it back.
Let me see. I'm sitting outside. The link is in the chat as well too, so if anybody's interested in that. But we'll close it out here. Thank you all so much, and everybody stay safe out there. There's so much going on, and we're praying for you guys, and you really just want to be an encouragement. And the last thing I might say is that, you know, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling stressed or whatever, call or reach out to somebody else and encourage them. You know, that's one of the things that I've learned over the course of time, is that, you know, if I want encouragement, you know, I need to be an encouragement. And so hopefully that is helpful to somebody out there. So with that, I think we'll close it out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.